Welcome everyone. Today we are going to work on assignment number 2. This is part of our unit on layouts and grids, and so you can find this assignment in our green project 1 folder. We're going to be drawing a grid. In order to do your assignment, you'll need to create a new Google drawing using your LAUSD Google Drive. And in order to create your drawing, you'll go to New, scroll down to where it says More, and your first option is a new drawing. Your new drawing will open in a brand new tab, and that is exactly what we want. Now, the first thing we need to do is to rename our file. So we'll go back to our drawing and do that. Click on the title at the top left corner. We want to name this after our class and after our assignment. So this is our graphic design class, and so we'll use the abbreviation GD for graphic design. We'll put our class period, and then we'll put a dash. This is an assignment. It's our second assignment, so we'll put A2. We'll also put a name on our assignment, and this is our first grid, so we'll call this grid 1. The last part of the requirement for naming your name is to put the first initial of your first name and put your full last name so I can easily see whose assignment I'm looking at. Once you have graphic design, your period number, the assignment name, and your name, click anywhere to rename your file. Renaming your files in Google software is the same process no matter what software you're using, whether it's Docs, Sheets, or Slides. So we've done the first step. So we'll go back to our assignment and we'll look at what our next step is. Our next step says to resize our page to 8.5 inches by 11 inches. This page setup that we've just gone to is the same process for any of our Google applications or programs. So whether you're working in Google Docs, Google Slides, or Google Sheets, if you go to File and scroll down to Page Setup, you can control the size of your page or document. Each program will have a different standard or default size. That is okay because you will always have an option to customize the size of your artboard or page. The width that we are going to enter is 8.5. The height that we are going to enter is 11. And our measurement is already in inches. This is our default letter size, paper size that we will be working with throughout the semester. Your artboard is now 8.5 by 11 inches. You will also know if you zoom in just a little bit that we have rulers on the top and on the left-hand side of your browser or tab or software is the default positioning for any ruler for any of the design software that we will use throughout the semester. This is an important note because our next requirement for our assignment is to add a margin. And so we need to know where we're going to put our margin and we need to measure it accurately. So we'll use these rulers to do that. So let's go back to our assignment. The third requirement for your assignment says you need to draw margins at 1.25 inches on all sides using bright blue lines. We can use guides to measure where we're going to draw our lines. So if I use my select tool and I click anywhere on my ruler and I click and hold and drag down, you will see that I'm dragging a line and there's a measurement. And if I stop, I have this small black line that appears. If I zoom out, I will see that I now have what we call guides. These guides are simply there as a measurement. If you right click, you can hide them. If you go to view, you will get the same menu to hide or show your guides. Google is giving you a default guide in the middle of your artboard. We don't need those right now, so we're going to move them off to the side for now, and we'll go back to zoom in to our top left corner, and we'll click and drag our guide to where it needs to be, which is 1.25 inches. So we can create any guide on our page by clicking on our ruler and dragging it to where we need it to be. We now have our margin on our top and our left-hand side using our guides. So this is our left margin guide. If we click, we can see that it is at 1.25 inches. We have our top margin guide. And now we have this other margin guide on the right side, and it needs to be at 1.25 inches. If we look at our top left corner, our rulers are the same in any design program we will use, but they are also positioned the same way. All rulers will always measure from the top left corner beginning at 0. So when we go to the other side, we will have to work reductively and subtract. Now I know that I need 1.25 inches, so I'll start at 1 inch from 8.5, which is 7.5, and I'll keep moving over until I get to 7.25. And you'll notice when I get there that there's this blue mark that shows up. If I go away, it goes away. If I come back, it shows me, and if I zoom out, I can explain. That blue mark is showing you that the margin guide you're using is the same distance from the edge of the page as the left one that we already created that we know is in the correct position. So we have our left margin, our right margin, and our top margin. The last margin we need is our bottom margin. And we can do the same thing if we click and drag and slowly move up. There will be a point where Google will tell us by putting in a blue line that our top and bottom margins are equally aligned, and we can let go and drop our guide. Now that we have our margin guides, they are all in the correct position. They are exactly where they need to be. But the way guides work is that it's simply a guide on screen for you to have as reference. It's not really part of your drawing yet. We can hide them. And we'll see that our guides are not actually part of our drawing yet. We need to draw those in with bright blue lines. So we'll put our guides back on. We'll go to our line tool and we'll start drawing our lines in now. You know you have your line tool selected because you'll notice the cursor is now a little X, a crosshairs across. And what we can do with that crosshair is perfectly align our line to the guides that we already created and the edge of our page. We want our margin line to cross the entire length of our artboard, so we'll line it up right here so we know it's aligned. And if we click and drag our line, we can go all the way across. Now, if you'll notice, if I'm freehanding, I can put my line at any angle, anywhere I want to on the page. That's awesome if we're creating a drawing, but we want to create margin lines, and this isn't aligned to my margin guide, so I don't want that. In order to create a straight line, we're going to click and drag, but we're going to hold Shift while we're clicking and dragging the entire way. As you can see, I can move my mouse, but my line is aligned to my guide until I get to the end of my page. I will release my mouse, release the Shift key, and now my line is perfectly aligned to my guide. I'm going to change the color so it's easy to see. I will change my pointer back to my select. And I'm going to hide my guides to show you. Now we have our margin exactly where we need it to be. That bright blue line shows me my margin line. So now we can finish putting the rest of our lines in. I'll put my guides back up and I'll draw the rest of my lines. Once you have your lines, you can grab your pointer again, hide your guides, and this step of the assignment is complete, so we can move on to our next step. Our next step in our assignment is to use solid gray boxes to create at least 3 columns. Before we do that, I also want to read the next step. The next step says we need to use solid gray boxes to create at least 2 rows. So we need to create 3 columns and 2 rows, and we're going to show that using gray boxes, and we'll do both of these steps together. Once we finish these 2 steps, we'll be finished with our assignment. We can check our rubric that is included right here to make sure that we're achieving role model status. The only requirement is that you must meet all of the requirements that are listed above. So let's go back and finish our assignment. So now we've learned how to create guides, we've learned how to draw lines. Now we need to make sure we know how to draw gray boxes or shapes. On our toolbar, the third option is a shape. We're going to choose a standard rectangle. Once we start creating and drawing our rectangles, we want to make sure that we keep all of our columns and rows inside the page layout that we've already created. So we'll work within this box created by our margins. To start, I will draw one rectangle that fits within my margins, and I will change the color to mid-gray, and I will remove my border so that the only thing I see is this gray box. Now we need to create rows and columns. I want to align this box to be my top row as if I had a header on my layout. It's a little bit big for me, so I think I'm going to make it a little smaller. And now I have successfully created my first row. The next thing I want to do is I can draw another shape, or I can use the shape I've already created and formatted with the correct color and removing my border by simply hitting Command C. Then I'm going to hit Command V on my keyboard, and I can easily duplicate the gray box that I've already used. This will allow me, once it's selected, to click on any of the blue squares and resize my box to create columns. Google will automatically allow you and show you using these red lines to show you that you have aligned your shapes to your margins. Once you have your first column, you can click and drag it and make it any size that you choose. You can then copy and paste to create a layout showing that you have a row and up to 3 columns. So I will paste another last box here. I think I might want to make my columns, the first column, smaller than my second column, and I will click and drag these out until they are the same size. If I click and drag my middle shape, I can also see the same blue lines, except this time those lines are between my columns, telling me that the space, the negative space between my columns, is the same size, so that there's equal space between all of my columns. According to my assignment, I only need 2 rows and 3 columns. If you would like to customize your layout a little bit more, I encourage you to do that. But as of now, this is a completed assignment, and now I can go back to Schoology and I can submit my assignment.